Those who argue that the surge is succeeding, I think, made a very careful case to not oversell it. One of the reasons they did it, and one of the reasons General Petraeus did it, is because we really won't know if the surge succeeds until after the American troops go. You don't know whether you've really built sustainable security until you're no longer on the streets. Ken and Mike point to the example of Mosul as a place where it looks like it's working. The problem is there are other places in Iraq where it hasn't looked like it's working. The British experience in Basra, for example, has been very negative in this regard. But even in Mosul, I thought Ken made a very good point. Exhaustion seems to be a key factor in what is making the level of violence go down. That's not unusual. In Middle East civil wars, in Lebanon, in the Palestinian territories, in Algeria, exhaustion more than anything else led to a temporary diminution in those civil wars. But in each case, it proved to be temporary, and the rate began to go back up once people weren't any more exhausted, and secondly, once they had rearmed. This is a Persian Gulf state. The economies of Persian Gulf states exist on one export, oil. In the past, Iraq exported two things, oil and dates. You cannot have a modern economy on date exports. You got to have it on oil. What is the oil situation? Today, Iraq produces about 2 million barrels per day. That's less than it did before the invasion, and that's substantially down from the peak in 2004. If the Iraqi economy is going to go anywhere, it's got to produce and export more oil, and there's no sign on the horizon that that's going to happen, or that this Iraqi government has a strategy to get there. So what are they dependent upon? Price. Your willingness to pay more money for their oil. So far, that's been a good bet. Because the price of oil has gone up, the lack of production hasn't been that critical. It's not clear that will continue to be the case. This policy, this determination that we're going to put so many forces in some place, means we don't have forces somewhere else. The biggest reflection of that, of course, has been Afghanistan, where we've had insufficient forces for years to deal with the problem. And we will continue to have insufficient forces because we just don't have enough forces. And because our allies are not being led to fill the gap. One of the most interesting points in the briefings was when General Petraeus was asked, will this policy make America safer? Because I think 6 years after September 11th, that's the fundamental question most Americans want to know the answer to. His answer was, I don't know. I found that a compelling moment in the testimony where I think all Americans should ask, are we safer because of the war in Iraq? Is it contributing to our safety? And if not, that may be the single most important question for Americans to think about.